Arriving at New York after his 22,000-mile trip, he has this statement to make.
Well, my friends, you know that I often stated my purpose for going to Korea was to look and to listen and to learn. Every one of us thinks we have learned something to make this expedition sort of a starting place from where we are going to plan, the programs we're going to adopt. And we expect them to be positive programs. Because, you know, my friends, just because one side wants peace doesn't make peace. We must go ahead and do things that induce the others to want peace also.
Eisenhower's first order of business was to end the Korean War, which he did, freezing the conflict right around where it started at the 38th parallel. This led to a permanent split between a communist North Korea and a South Korea aligned with the U.S. that persists until this day. Other than that, Eisenhower wanted to be a hands-off president. He didn't see much that needed to be done now that the Korean War was over and the U.S. was still the world hegemonic power. As a military man, Eisenhower knew that the Russians would forever have the largest army. Americans would never stand for a large army in time of peace. But we had a head start in nuclear weapons, and Eisenhower intended to keep America's lead. His New Look policy stressed the importance of nuclear technology, including bombers and missiles. He saw them as more cost-effective than an army, more likely to convince the Soviets not to start a war. He might have been right about this strategy, but, as we'll see later, he would have some regrets about it. Part of maintaining America's technological lead was researching and developing the technologies of the future. You couldn't just build more nuclear weapons, you needed to keep inventing better ones. The government gave contracts to private companies who could research and develop the weapons of the future. These companies needed plenty of space to experiment, not to mention privacy. Space and privacy were on short supply in the crowded cities of the Northeast. It is kind of tough to test a secret new rocket over the skies of New York City, but the South, particularly the Southwest, had plenty of space and privacy. Companies set up shop in places like Arizona and Nevada, where the skies were clear, the population was sparse, and the land was flat. This meant that the jobs of the future would be in the Southwest, specifically engineering and manufacturing jobs. Jobs attracted people. This made the Southwest the fastest growing part of the United States. One of the stories of post-World War II America was the population boom in the Sun Belt, a region that stretches from Florida in the east to Southern California in the west. This booming population increased the Sun Belt's representation in Congress and the Electoral College, while the old population centers of the Northeast started to shrink. This shaped politics well into the 21st century. Sun Belt politicians like Richard Nixon, Lyndon Johnson, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, and George Bush Jr. all rose to the presidency. Sun Belt members of Congress advocated for policies that benefited them, particularly defense spending. As long as the government contracts kept rolling in, the Sun Belt would have jobs. But a military needs enemies. That was the role the Soviet Union played. It was in the interest of politicians and weapons contractors to make the Soviet Union seem as scary as possible. North Korea invaded South Korea, the Soviet Union was behind it. North Vietnam fought against France or American imperialism, the Soviet Union was pulling the strings. Fidel Castro, president of Cuba, he's working for the Soviets. The Soviets were everywhere, and we needed the weapons to stop them. Before Stalin was America's boogeyman, it was Hitler, a man with an industrialized war machine bent on world domination. America needed a war machine too, and in America, war machines run on capitalism. Secretary of War Henry Stimson once said, "If you are going to go to war in a capitalist country, you had better let business make money out of the process or business won't work." In short, war needed to be good for business. What was good for business was good for the American economy. It was clear even before Hitler's defeat that America's next boogeyman was going to be Joseph Stalin. Many of the companies that received weapons contracts during World War II would continue to do so during the Cold War. Weapons contracts were big money. Companies used that big money not just to make weapons, but on advertising and lobbying to make sure they would continue to get weapons contracts. They pressed congressmen to take firm stances against communism, to be Cold Warriors. With Cold War fears on everyone's minds, the contracts kept coming, factories kept humming, and the guns kept gunning. This was concerning to Eisenhower. During his farewell address at the end of his second term in 1961, Eisenhower warned about what he called the military-industrial complex.
We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
He feared that weapons contractors, the members of Congress they lobbied, and military leaders were pushing the country to adopt bad policies. By funneling money into the military, they increased tensions with the Soviets, making confrontation with them more likely. Military spending soaked up an increasing amount of tax money, so there was less money left for social programs to help the American people. And, ironically, the military-industrial complex violated the rules of capitalism. There was no free market in weapons. There was only one customer, the government, and only a handful of corporations with the resources to provide what the government needs. Money went from the government to arms companies. Arms companies used a portion of that money to influence members of government. And it wasn't even a free labor market. Pentagon officials regularly resigned their positions to work for weapons contractors and vice versa. A revolving door of people were determining America's foreign and military policies. It violated both our democratic and capitalistic institutions. The rise of the military-industrial complex coincided with the rise of America as the world power. As the American empire got bigger, so did the military. As America's military got bigger, so did the empire. It was a process that fed off itself. Eisenhower feared that this process was bringing America further and further away from democracy and capitalism. Those 13 American colonies who declared their independence in 1776 to escape an oppressive empire had now taken that empire's place and was becoming oppressive abroad and at home.